Let's do it.
Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BETSPERTS.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. We are back. We are live. We are streaming. We are talking NFL. It is great to be back live. Andy is refreshed from an incredible vacation in the beautiful state of Maine. Very jealous that you got to go to Maine. Love that. How was your vacation?
Pretty good. And you know what, as I thought of you as I was coming back, as I was sitting in Logan, and they had this giant mural of Walden Pond. Not because you're I was gonna say, not because you're a deep thinker or some sort of transcendentalist.
Not because I live a quiet life of quiet desperation or whatever the quote is.
Yeah. You were I remembered that story. I'm like, God, that's weird. I'm like, I think Drew worked here. I was telling my wife, but no, lovely vacation, way too much lobster, a lot of beach time. The beaches were fantastic. Really highly recommended. I don't know what I'm going to do for next year. Might be Outer Banks, and not just because the TV show is cool. Like, I think Will's kind of talked me into something in the Carolinas at this point. But yeah, it feels good to be refreshed, and also like maybe one of my better weeks in a long time with some Olympic bets hitting the account. And then really like two of the outrights now I've hit on golf have been kind of shitty, which to be fair, like my Usti second a couple times. It's bigger numbers hurt, but I've got Seamus Power about a month ago with the JP Poston just fucking melt. And then I got Abe Answer with, multiple people melting. That was so it's one of those things. Like if you keep doing this long enough, you're gonna have a bunch of shitty beats and you're gonna have a bunch of lucky wins, and it'll all come out in the wash. But yeah, Answer at 50-1 and some Olympic bets coming through felt really good. And like I mentioned to a couple people now, my family's sleeping in the hotel we stayed in Boston last night as I'm up trying to figure out exactly how women's Omnium worked. I know how it works. By the end of it,
it worked out exactly the way it was supposed to work out, Andy. It worked exactly correctly. That's all I know. The Olympics were an absolute joy. There is no other way to put it. Winning, generally a winning 2 weeks. Week one, substantially more fun from a winning standpoint than week two. Week two was just an all-out sweat on that Japan under gold. I definitely, I think it was the right side, right?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it shouldn't have been that close. We really didn't weight the home judging enough, I guess, apparently but it did get there. The South Korean side, that was never going to happen. The U.S. side, I mentioned this on Brown Bag this morning. I'm glad I took the 46 at 2-1 instead of laying any juice with it. At least that helped kind of take some of the sting out of it. And really, Japan was my biggest win. Like that was one of my biggest positions. That was my biggest win, closely followed by, again, shout out to a longtime friend of the pod, Money Mark Mills. I never do it in the right order, but I went pretty. He really got me hyped up for the Brits in that relay
4x2.
We got some big numbers on that. That felt good. Awesome. And then you got me just laying all kinds of crazy juice on the kayaker, Miss Carrington,
Lisa Carrington. She was dynamite, man.
This sounds silly because there wasn't that much money in this account, but I put an entire account on her in one of the sprints. I'm just like, well, I wonder if they'll take all this. And I clicked. I'm like, oh, I guess they did. Oh, that's a bet. No, that's a bet. So she came through. Yeah, like a lot of this stuff was smaller degen stuff, but there were some nice actionable positions. And the gold medal, stuff we recommended went 3-2 for a nice little Olympiad. And 6 months from now, and somebody just mentioned Australia golds was insanely easy.
Australia gold, Russia gold also. That got there.
Put that to rest.
Boy, that should have been easier. Yeah.
Well, no, Australia. The pool.
Let me ask.
The rest. The pool was not short.
Yeah, the pool was not short. Absolutely. But just real quick opinion question: would you rather have a no doubt week one winner like Australia over, or was it more enjoyable to kind of legitimately break down every single of gold medal that was going to be awarded and try to figure out if there was any probability of Japan getting it for the Japan under, because that was a very unique experience.
It was
really.
fun, but we kept finding bad surprises. Like, oh shit, we have another Japanese guy in the semifinals of a sport that we didn't think they'd even medal in. We're looking at this every time there'd be a good surprise, like, oh, they screwed up in this event. Be like, oh, they have 2 semifinalists in an event. Like it was fun. In hindsight, we can say it's fun because the bet won. If it had landed on 28, we'd have been not thinking it's quite.
I'd have a red ass.
The Australian and Russia ones, like, even though they did, they didn't hit immediately, like those were in good shape right off the bat. So I guess I enjoyed all of them equally, and I'm excited to get back to the winter stuff again.
2 times in a row now, I've been up on the last day of the Olympics and just sweating, just insane stuff. The France under 5.5 came down to the last event. The Japan under 28.5 came down to the 27.5 came down to the last event, the women's Omnium. Ultimately it was won by Jennifer Valente. She's of San Diego. US 25-1 shot comes through in the women's Omnium to steal gold from Japan. That would have been to number 28. Ultimately, I know, it was incredible. Ultimately, the judo handicap I thought was sound, but we still caught a ton of unlucky breaks. We were like, there's no way they can win 11. Well, they didn't win 11. They won 9. Like, they still won a ton of judo gold medals. The 5 wrestling was a complete surprise. I only had that 1 or 2. That hurt, and that came late too. So there was no way to really protect yourself, defend yourself from those.
It turns out judo know nothing about the judging that we were going to see there.
No.
We were hoping for like 6 there. Oh, we got a special request from the chat.
Sure, what you got?
K-Bull. It's his birthday.
Oh yeah.
Assuming gender here.
K-Bull.
It is their birthday. I'd feel terrible if it was a lady.
Happy freaking birthday.
Happy birthday, K-Bull.
It felt like my birthday with that Japan under coming through, man.
It does feel like there was like a little bit of a letdown, but at the same time, we are now 30 days away from an NFL opener. We have college football in a few weeks. The golf, the FedEx playoffs are coming, right? As much as it's tougher to bet on that stuff, it's definitely exciting events. Like the month of August is pretty good from a sports perspective as far as getting into the real meat of the NFL as we start to get training camp news every day. My God, everybody's in the best shape of their life, and every young quarterback's really making all the throws, really, really whizzing the ball, really, really hitting guys deep, really nice session. Every time they do something bad, they followed it up with 3 nice passes after that, though.
Yeah.
And Summer League, I forgot about Summer League's fun.
I just want to put a real quick bow on the Olympics. I think my three favorite moments, real quick. Watching the 50K race walk, desperately hoping that Japan did not get that gold. And then Japan had the live leader. He was 1-1. He's plus 100 basically to win. And then they froze the market. The Olympics were on commercial, and then you come back and the Polish guy was like 1-50, and it was like yes, like the live number just told you everything you needed to know before you even saw what happened. You knew the Polski was going to win the 50K race walking. That was absolutely incredible. That any other that really stood out of super memorable moments from a betting standpoint?
I mean, just some of the shorter races in swimming, like I didn't bet many sprints in the running and track, but I bet some sprints and boy, you don't even get a chance to like get nervous. Like that shit's just too fast. Like you don't even get a chance to get riled up. So I enjoy those because I think it's better for my heart.
Oh, the Japan, the night we dodged the potential for a table tennis gold, a sport climbing gold, the 20K race walk gold. And I think there was another, was it the women's wrestling? There was 4 golds that were all potential one night, and we dodged all 4 of them. Anyway,
yeah.
I'll put it.
No, and I guess my final bow on the Summer Olympics is sports climbing is fire, and we should keep that.
It's awesome.
Really, I didn't like skateboarding that much. And
no, they tried. Like, I honestly, the package they put together of the men's final that was in the in the was it the park, the one that was in the pool basically.
Yeah.
That was pretty good. The couple of guys had legitimately amazing runs. Otherwise, that was a whiff. Surfing was a whiff. Karate, oh my god,
Solo karate, kata.
my god, the kata, holy crap. That was such a fraudulent sport. I don't know if you watched the men's finals, but they gave that to Japan, and the Spanish guy, he was like looking into my soul the whole time he was doing his kata. I was like, this has got to be the best kata that's ever been done. The Japan guy was awful, and they gave the Japan guy the gold. I was
That's what I'm saying about the home judging in a sport that nobody's really seen. Yeah, we almost
what a
got
ridiculous sport. What a ridiculous sport. They cannot believe they put, and really all of the karate in general was just insane. I can't believe they made that an Olympic sport. Anyway, great times. Let's move on and let's talk about some football. I'm still extremely fired up here. I am starting to really crystallize a lot of my opinions across the entire NFL. Not a lot of real uncertainty left in terms of where I'm going to go between now and when we start to see these teams play some preseason games. I guess, are you at the point where you've got enough information from camp, short of injuries, short of seeing preseason? Like you're not really going to change your opinion much on these teams until we get real live games, right?
Yeah, I need to see like some games with some starters playing, and even then, I can't use that preseason stuff that much outside of like the only useful thing in a preseason game is a guy tearing an ACL. Like, oh,
Sure.
that guy's out. Like, otherwise, it's like, oh, they played well, and then you have to go look. Like, was that a complete? If an offense plays well, it's like, was that all their starters? Was that actually the starting defense that we'll see? And also, the context of the game not meaning anything. Like, it's tough to take some of that preseason stuff and use it for anything. My numbers are probably where they're at. They're going to move based on injuries to probably a quarterback, a key cog to an offensive line, maybe an offensive skill position player.
Sure.
It'd have to be a wide receiver where the replacement is a real tough sell or real tough hang.
Do you see yourself making any more futures bets between now and the start of the season, or you think you're locked and loaded?
Maybe some award stuff, but I'm pretty locked. I have a few more regular season win totals I'm digging into. I'll have some more of those, but nothing major. These will all be smaller bets that I'm mostly placing just doing a little digging. And yeah, with that, the NFC North.
Let's get into the NFC North today, man.
Shall I cue the 2020 Lions season?
Let's start with the worst team in the Green Bay Packers. Let's get it over with. No, of course, we're starting with the Lions. The Lions are the longest odds of the 2020 of 2021 NFC North challengers, and their 2020 season was a disaster in exactly the worst possible way, right? Like they did really poorly. They fired their coach, but they didn't do poorly enough to set themselves up to get the franchise changing quarterback. They don't really have a vision. The front office turned over. I guess at what point during the 2020 season did you know it was going wrong for the Lions?
So, and I'll probably end up pushing back a little on, I'm not like enamored with the front office, but as far as the position they're in, the position they got put in, I don't hate what they did in the offseason. Spoiler alert. I'm not hating where they're heading outside of one person.
Oh, I strongly agree with that statement.
Yeah, I think it's not the Miami rebuild, but we're getting there. But yeah, it was a rough season. They were actually dead last year in points per game given up at 32.4. Only one other team was on the other side of 30. They gave up over 30 points in their last 6 games. They were not a good defense. This offense was fun at times. They had a couple of good receivers. We'll talk about those guys in a little bit. But yeah, they fired their coach and their GM like the day or 2 days after Thanksgiving. Like what an awful Thanksgiving break. But I mean, you lose the Texans like that.
That Thanksgiving game was awful.
Well, yeah.
We won a lot of money on that, though.
Yeah, we did. We went like Texans second half money line when they were like 2 or 3 point dogs in the half. And yeah, getting fired over things. I mean, doing that on national television, performing that badly, playing like that. And it's funny too. They actually did the whole let's turn over a shitload of positional coaches from the year before to, I don't know if it was a Matt Patricia thing trying to save his job. There's always jockeying, and wait till we get to the Bears, always jockeying by head coaches and front offices to do things to kind of pass the buck without actually saying it out loud to, prolong your tenure somewhere, especially somewhere where you're not playing well. And as low as the expectations have been in Detroit for a while, even, even last year, it just wasn't going to be enough. And that was a terrible beating. And it was kind of a bad start to the season. Like, they looked good out of the gate.
Yeah.
And by out of the gate, I mean the first 3 quarters. And then we had a couple of cornerback injuries. All of a sudden, Mitch Trubisky turned into Joe frickin' Montana. Bears put up 21 unanswered in the 4th quarter to win. And that was kind of what we rode from there. They actually were riding an 11-game losing streak into the game they won against the Cardinals with some late field goals. It was an ugly game. If you go back to last season,
only 29 points.
It wasn't a good season last season either. So I mean, I don't blame him for getting rid of Patricia, Matt Quinn. Bevel as an interim, you knew that was never going to be the answer. But then we'll get to, they interviewed quite a few people that are actually head coaches for other teams and then landed on Mr. Nutjob here. But the 2020 season was pretty rough. I'd say maybe the only positive thing is losing down the stretch, making sure they lost the last few games. The Vikings were dumb enough to win the final game and move back 4 or 5 spots in the draft because of it, which the Lions lost that game, and they might have got a franchise changing, or, not changing, but, a rock solid rookie that could play for a good 15 years at a very important position. So that's, I guess that's the only positive I can dig from 2020 outside of maybe getting rid of Patricia, who is, I don't have good things to say about Patricia, especially as I dug into him. He wasn't as smart as he let on. He was really low as far as league averages on play action, using movement, RPO. He wasn't aggressive on 4th downs. He was in the bottom 3rd of the league and all that stuff for being this. He's a rocket scientist. I'm a rocket scientist. Well, he wasn't.
Well, it turns out eating pencils is a sign that you're not actually very smart. But aside from that, the Lions, he lost that locker room in year 1. And they kept him on for year 3. And even, there were some smart people who understand football, who know what they're talking about, that were quietly the Lions could win this division last year. There was a little bit of steam on their NFC North number, right? It went from 11-12 to 1 got bet down to 6-5-6 to 1. They were expected to be a team that was worst case scenario around 500. And if the pieces fell into place on the defense in particular, this is a team that was expected to challenge Green Bay for the NFC North title. It did not go that way. You mentioned the week 1 loss to the Bears was embarrassing, the way that they let them back in the game. But of course, they had a cluster injury at cornerback. On top of having a young secondary, they had a cluster injury occur in week 1. Never good. There was still some betting support for them week 2 against the Packers. They got absolutely rolled. And even through all this, Patricia managed to kind of keep this team fighting. They were 3-3. This was not a oh my God, are they going to go winless kind of a team? They were hanging in there around 500 until the wheels really fell apart when they lost 20-0 to the Panthers. That was kind of the game where you knew the team finally had quit on Patricia. Texans obviously blanked them on Thanksgiving, and then the jig is up at that point. They get one pity win against the Bears and lose out the season. I agree with your assessment entirely. Patricia needed to go. They probably needed to fire him after year 2, but they gave him one last chance. Patricia's what he was bringing to the table was his ability to out scheme you defensively. This defense was a disaster and embarrassment for 3 straight years under Patricia. They never found their footing under him. He never developed players. He never had any of the magic of a Belichick or any of the other, the Miami Dolphins coach who came out from under Belichick. Brian Flores he is 20 times the coach Patricia ever was for the Lions. He never brought a schematic advantage. He never did anything positive in terms of exactly like you said, nothing ever plus EV about the way he operated this football team. And yes, them kind of moving on from both the head coach and the front office, I think, was warranted. And the expectations are exceptionally low for all the reasons you mentioned. Let's move on to the offseason changes, which starts with maybe the most important change of this franchise. They hit on a first overall QB, which is not a guarantee. Stafford was a hit. Would you agree with that? That's correct. Stafford was a hit.
Yeah, I mean, the surrounding, honestly, I don't even want to say the surrounding offense was a problem. He had good receivers. He had some good backs. It was really the coaching and leadership in the team for most of his career that
he made some playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, they did make some playoffs. He was very good. I mean, he was a very good quarterback. I still think he is. I still think he's got some gas left in the tank. I don't hate the Rams this year. I mean, it's a tough division. We'll get to them, but I think for sure he was a good quarterback. I think they hit on that. They just outside of that, things just didn't work out all that well. You had Aaron Rodgers in your division for all them years, and once in a while the Vikings would have a good offense. The Bears, won the division 2 years ago. It was a tough shake for Stafford, and it was I think it was the right move as far as
it was time to move on.
Well, and he wasn't in on the rebuild. He says, I'm not sitting in on a rebuild at this point in my career.
I think it was kind of a good mutual.
Yeah.
He prevents the rebuild because he keeps you in purgatory. Right.
Yeah.
And his cost. Yeah, exactly.
Well, and how well he could play. Yeah. You end up with an 8-8 season, 8-9 season or whatever. And yeah, it's funny. You want a worse quarterback, but we're going to have good things to say about Jared Goff. But outside of the, we'll get to the coaching after that, I guess. But the Sewell thing maybe won't be some huge, game-changing thing immediately if you don't have the team around him. But offensive line probably a strength of the team in general anyway. So you'll have a decent offensive line. It sucks. It's probably not even a top 10 offensive line. It's close. I bet I'd have to look. I bet I'm having around 10th. But
top half of the league.
It's definitely top half. That is probably your strength. Their strength last year was probably, at some points the passing game, because you had a good quarterback that we just nailed on with Galladay and Jones and a decent tight end. And now you just have a decent tight end and a bunch of God knows what at wide receiver. So the wide receiver core, I'm not sure you can take a unit and fall that far. I'm not sure anyone has done that with a unit. That's a heavy fall from grace for Galladay to the Eagles, Jones to the Jags, and Stafford for Goff. Your passing game is going to be worse, and you've got, I don't know, the coach from a bad Disney movie coaching you. Like if Disney were on HBO, that didn't even make a lot of sense. But I don't know. We might want to just get to this guy eventually here. It's just I don't think this works in 2021. These are not college kids. These are not high school kids. Especially college kids, it might not work anymore now that they can get paid. But these are not high school kids that you can scream at and rah motivate. These are businessmen with a lot of money who respect, forward thinking. I guess look at the coaches who are successful in the league. They're innovators. They're respected by their players because they lead by example and not say crazy. You don't see Andy Reid or Bill Belichick saying crazy stuff. I guess Bill's crazy in his own different way, and Andy Reid has the Hawaiian shirts. But if you remember Mike Tice, he coached the Vikings. He's probably still in the league somewhere. Mike Tice was coach for the Vikings one, and he tried this. He ran out in the practice field one day on practice with a jersey and shoulder pads on to motivate the team. It didn't work. That stuff doesn't work. These aren't 17-year-old kids. I'm super not sold on this. And at the same time, I'm thinking maybe once they lost, some of the candidates they interviewed Saleh, they interviewed Staley, they interviewed, I think, 3 or 4 guys that ended up head coaches elsewhere. I think maybe once they missed all their guys, they just said, fuck it, let's find someone cheap, and we'll probably fire him in 2 years when the rebuild is fixed. So maybe it was a decent move. I'm not sure if it was cheap. I'd have to check his salary. Either way, it doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I'm not sure what part of somebody just called him Walmart Jim Harbaugh. Patrick. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what he did in the interview process that we're all right, this lunatic, he's our guy. I'm sure this will work.
You want to know what it was?
They thought he was Dan Campbell? Matt Campbell?
No, they interviewed Saleh and they liked Saleh and they liked his energy. And then Dan Campbell came in and did a very good Robert Saleh impression after Saleh got hired by the Jets and turned down the Lions. I think that was probably how the dots got connected here. And, realistically, I think this had you're right. The Dan Campbell rah bite him in the kneecaps, quotable nonsense does not last long in the NFL, not in today's NFL at least. But at the same time, it'll make a positive impression in year one relative to what they had last year with Patricia. right? And in general, like you get the feeling from reading like player quotes and seeing videos of Detroit Lions camp that the players are relatively happy because this is an upgrade in sort of the attitude in the building, right? Like, oh, this is much more fun than what we had under Patricia, right? So just the general sort of fun aspect, fun novelty of it, I think is going to get the most out of these guys from the beginning here. The problem is this feels like 1 year removed from the Joe Judge experience. Like you bring a Joe Judge in year one, he's like all this energy, all of a sudden it's fun playing for him. You get a surprisingly good performance out of your defense. Some things go well. And then year two, he has him doing sprints and push-ups and stuff in training camp. And they're like, no, I'm over this. Like, I'm a professional. I don't need to be treated like this. Like, this isn't how you treat adults, right? And I think that's probably the path that Dan Campbell goes down. I feel like we're going to relive history here. And so I think I am not going to tell you that Dan Campbell is going to be a good coach in the long run, in the short run, in the medium run for the Detroit Lions. I can just tell you that if they find success early in this season, if they luck into a couple wins, if the team gels and has chemistry and cohesiveness at all, you are going to get a lot of stories about, boy, were we wrong about Dan Campbell. He really has got it figured out. Like the 180 that the media is going to spin on this guy is going to be, break your neck. And I'm just going to stay the course and recognize that
I'm going to be clutching to that wall, letting the waves hit me.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh yeah, no, let this come and go. Let this come and go. Okay.
You bring up a good point about Patricia, though, too. Like that kind of culture doesn't work either. Like Patricia was the same kind of
abject dick.
Yeah, he was just a dick. The smartest guy in the room, but turned out to not be that smart. That doesn't work either. It's like saying there's no right way to coach an NFL team, but there's plenty of wrong ways. And I think Patricia was definitely it, and Campbell might be too. It's like you said, it might work early on, but it's one of those things. And we'll get into this offense. If this offense just doesn't work, the defense isn't good, the team is going to lose. Like this stuff works when you're a plucky team that's grinding out a couple of wins here and there. But if this team starts slow, that stuff will wear thin even faster.
But here's the thing.
Who knows how that goes?
This feels so much like Giants 2.0. Like so much. I can't get over it. Like the coaching staff. Right? You bring in an ex-head coach in Anthony Lynn that plays the Jason Garrett role. Runs a minus EV offense. Your offense is hitting its head against the ceiling created by your own scheme, right? You bring in a good, not well-known, relatively talented defensive coordinator, guy who got absolute studs developed into all pros for the New Orleans Saints in their secondary. Put him with a team of young players on defense. The defense is probably going to surprise. I'm guessing that they're going to be let me look at what the market ranking is right now for the Detroit Lions defense. You want to guess what the market expects this defense to come in terms of top 32?
23rd.
31. This is supposed to be the second to worst defense in the NFL.
I thought the offense would be over. I thought they'd be overranked, I guess.
The offense is 31st. The defense is 31st. Okay. I can tell you just looking at some of these other teams that they're down here with in terms of defense is that this defense is underrated. They're not like a top half, but they're clearly in the 20s. They are not a 31st best defense in the NFL when you look at the talent that this team has. It's important maybe to put up, kind of characterize some of the other additions. The defense turned over. The whole team turned over massively. They had a huge amount of turnover. But everybody that walked out the door from the defensive side of things is a giant shrug. No one that I was really upset to see go. A lot of guys past their peak. A lot of guys are paying too much anyway. And they reloaded pretty reasonably with a couple of impressive picks, I thought, on the defensive line. Levi out of Washington was a really nice, he's going to be a 5 to 8 year starter for you. I like McNeil out of NC State as well. You got a couple of nice young bodies now that you can freaking rotate through your D line. Your D line is all of a sudden deeper. You have Flowers, who was a way overpaid last year, but he's still a decently talented player on the end. You got Jamie Collins, who was overpaid last year, but he is still a decently talented linebacker. And yeah, you literally just need any of these, the cornerbacks to medium hit. And this is not a 31st ranked defense, especially considering how it's going to be coordinated, in my opinion.
Yeah, like ceiling maybe 20 if it works out with a good coordinator. A couple of these guys hit pretty much. Yeah, if Okudah takes a step forward, and really I do feel bad for Okudah. High expectations when you're drafted that high, but he got his feet put to the fire early with the injuries. Like he had to take a much bigger role in a bad defense with some rough players around him than he was probably expecting immediately. But Corn Elder, our old friend Corn Elder makes an appearance here. Dunbar, the safeties stay the same, the linebackers stay the same. Some new faces in the front four. Maybe 20 is even a bit high for me. Like I agree with you. I think 30 is probably low, but if the front four play well, the linebackers will be okay, and you do need a cornerback or two to play above their expectations at this point. The defense won't be terrible. It's not an easy schedule, and the defense might be out there a lot. And the defense that I can see it. I really, you talked about the draft here quick. Like obviously the Sewell pick, everybody loves that. It's hard to hate on that, especially at the 7. Like 3 months prior to that, he was top 2, top 3.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the D tackle from Washington, a couple of D tackles actually in the 2nd or 3rd, and then St. Brown, the USC kid, the wide receiver.
Yeah,
he's legit. No, maybe not on any other team in this division, possibly, truthfully, but on the Lions with what they have at receiver now, he's a guy who could play some serious time he was a day 3 guy. Like he's a guy who could play in the slot. He did play in the slot and outside at USC, so he's probably going to make an impact if he has a good camp. So
are there
probably a decent draft, and they have a lot of cheap guys on the roster now, especially with the jettisoning. That really hit me hard. Jettisoning of Mr. Stafford. I still don't know if I got that right. They got rid of Matt Stafford, and he was expensive. So the fact that they're, what they're spending going into 2020 basically is kind of how you start a rebuild. So if this team has a shitty year and gets another high draft pick, maybe Goff doesn't work out and they can nail a young quarterback, like this is going to start rolling like Miami started rolling. And you just, if the coaching doesn't work out, you got a couple years to figure that out as well. You keep adding, you have a good offensive line. That's a good foundation. You bring in some young backs and receivers off waivers, see what hits there. Like, I like that. It's almost like fantasy football where you just grab guys off the waiver wires and be like, oh man, this guy's good now. Like, this is awesome because I got him for nothing. Like that's what you do in this rebuild. It's kind of Miami went through a shitload of guys as far as running backs. You find something that works. You don't have to stick with it either when you're not paying much for it. So I love the rebuild. I'm not excited for this year. And obviously, they're last. We're saying bad things about the team that's going to be dead last in the division as far as projections go.
Yep. How about this? 2 St. Browns at wide receiver in the NFC North. What are the chances of that? You think they're related? Equanimous St. Brown and this guy they drafted from
Amon-Ra?
Amon-Ra and Equanimous. Are they brothers?
You would think so, man. They have some crazy ass first names, and then they have
St. Brown. Yeah,
his brother is Equanimous.
They're brothers. That's
Equanimous.
Awesome, man. So there's 2 brothers named St. Brown in the NFC North. Very cool. All right.
I will give you any amount of money if you can guess. He has a 3rd brother who plays football currently at Stanford.
Oh, really? Give me a first letter.
O.
O? Audacious.
Osiris.
Oh,
of the Egyptian god. I think are they all Egyptian gods? Amon-Ra.
Maybe.
Great.
They
That's
might
cool
be
theme.
Actually.
Boy,
that's a cool theme.
Boy, we get back together and we just start.
I love this, man.
Osiris. Look at it.
Osiris.
I
Osiris
hope
in
he
this
ends
shit.
up. I hope he ends up in the league too. So, all
Some
right,
good
let's talk some
Wu-Tang
golf because,
bread.
and I'm gonna let you. I'm gonna let you take this.
I don't want to talk
Because
golf. Golf is
well,
over for this year. Oh,
golf.
golf. Oh, sorry.
All right,
Golf.
no.
Okay.
Before you do anything, I'm gonna give you my 15-second golf take, and I'll let you take the
Go.
rest of it.
Ready, go.
This could be a problem. Anybody remember golf with Fisher?
Yes.
This could be
bad.
golf with Fisher part 2, like golf without an offensive mastermind. Anthony Lynn makes or breaks golf. We find out if he falls into that category of terrible head coach, decent coordinator. Because if Goff doesn't have somebody really scheming people open, he might be dicked, which could be great for the franchise long term. So your take.
There are two things that could bring him down. One is if Anthony Lynn is not a good coordinator, if he's running minus EV offense. The other thing is even if Anthony Lynn is scheming guys open scheme-wise, can those guys get open? Because the talent at wide receiver is so suspect. So there really are two things working against him here, on top of the fact that he was basically given away for parts. Really, this deal was made possible because the Detroit Lions were like, you will give us a first round pick in order to take this guy off your hands. That's never a huge thing from a confidence standpoint for a player. But that said, I don't love passing on Fields. I don't love it. But I get it. You weren't going to do well enough. You weren't going to have a good enough team around Fields to have him thrive early in his career anyway. And I think you accelerate the risk that a guy like Fields becomes a bust if you reach, if you have this as bad a team as they have, especially roster wise from a skill position standpoint. If you have that bad of a roster and you bring in Fields, you accelerate the likelihood that he is a bust. And I don't think you want to do that. And so instead they get, they firm up what is their only strength really at this point in time, which is their offensive line with Penei Sewell. Penei Sewell, 10-year potential starter for you. And again, we talked about this, I think, in our draft reactions, where I think I was like, I think the Lions kind of won the draft because they got good blue chip players on both lines that aren't going to help you win games this year, but they're going to help you win games next year when you have a higher pick and you can take a swing on a rookie quarterback in next year's draft. And so ultimately, everybody who is involved in this from top to bottom knows that Goff is a placeholder and that he is here for a 1-year stint to try to rehabilitate his image so that some other team gives him a contract after this year. I do not see him on the 2022 Lions roster. No way, no shape, no form, no how. I think they take a quarterback in next year's draft. If they have to use multiple assets to move up to get in position to take a quarterback, I think they do it. And I'm fine with that ultimately, because this is Goff, he's shown us what he is. I think we understand where his distribution of potential quarterback play is in this league, and it is a narrow distribution. And it is not near the top. And I think, looked exactly like you said, Anthony Lynn's scheme could bring him down this year. I think the wide receiver room could bring him down this year. But at the same time, he would be a bust if the offensive line sucked, right? Like he could have good skill position players and a good offensive coordinator and a really bad line, and I would have more certainty that Goff wasn't going to do anything good. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's especially what we saw 2 years ago. I think it was after the Super Bowl reaching season. He lost a guard and a center. And I mean, again, kudos to you. You called this in the preseason. You said, and I just looked at this and he doesn't do good with pressure up the middle. And he really did struggle at certain points that year. They haven't been back to the Super Bowl since. They've been a playoff team, but they haven't been able to reach those heights. So, yeah, Goff without McVay, a bit of a quarterback whisperer, I suppose, in his ear, and without some decent, because he always had some decent weapons in LA. Like he always had some good. So, if you want to real quickly tell me who you think the best receiver on the team is in Perriman, Terrell Williams, or Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like it's
Jesus, man.
It's a lot, and I don't want to shit on those guys because I feel like they've had good games, and one's a rookie, obviously, the day 3 rookie, but he might start in the slot at certain points. But I mean, these are guys with upside, but they're certainly a whole heap of unknown because they haven't been asked to be the guys Perriman was a bit of a, I think he was a bit of a second fiddle there in Baltimore, I think, for the most part. Williams was on Oakland/Vegas, and I know that offense was just kind of, I mean, those games are track meets a lot of times. They're fun, but I don't know how he fits in here. So this will be interesting to say the least. I don't think the offense plays well. I don't think Goff plays well. And later when we talk about the schedule, I'll get more into this, but their schedule is forecast to be like a top 10 toughest. Some people have a top 5 toughest. And if you want to go, I think it was Warren Sharp's guide did opposing defenses efficiencies, and their average of opposing defense efficiency they placed was, or play against, is the second toughest in the league. A lot can change, but it's never good to have that as a starting point when you have questionable receivers, a quarterback with massive question marks, a new OC, a crazy coach, and I guess a good offensive line. I won't shit talk the offensive line. I think it's good, not great. So
yeah,
having a really tough schedule of
tough.
opposing defenses isn't going to make this any better. So I'm not excited about Goff at all.
No, and I mean, honestly, because your strength is your offensive line, because of the temptation Anthony Lynn is tempted to establish the run, you're probably going to get a lot of Goff hands off to Swift, Goff hands off to Swift, Goff on 3rd and 7 tries to hit TJ Hawkinson. Can he hit him?
Hits him for 5 yards punt.
Yeah, for 5 yards punt. Yeah, I mean the offense is very, very low. I mean the fact that they're 31st expectation in the NFL is fair to me. That's completely fair. But I think there is something positive to say about the certainty that this is a rebuild and that they're going to move on, right? Like it's a little less weird. It's a little less kind of tough dealing with sort of the inner team politics, knowing that this team is not expected to win this year and that Goff is not expected to be the long-term answer at quarterback. Like I kind of like that better than a maybe like with the Raiders, like Carr. Right? Like is the situation with Carr better than with Goff and the Lions? Not really, right?
No, I'd rather be the owner, GM, fan of the Lions right now. I think they're actually placing things well for, and again, we're talking, is it an upside team or is it a tanking team? So what sucks is players can't tank because that's how you get hurt. And obviously they need to play well for future contracts. And, we live in the free agency era for quite a while now. You can't play shitty and tank. Coaches can't tank because how do you pose that? Like, hey guys, this game's getting a little too close. We need to bring it back a little in the second half.
Doug Peterson, man, he put Sudfeld in the second half.
Dougie P did it, but he knew he was on the way out, so fuck it. He actually did him a solid on the way out the door. The only way to tank is through the front office and the way they drafted, the way they lined up this offense for this year, the way they're the way they're structuring their salary right now. I feel like the front office is at least semi-tanking, and I think that's where we end up. Because honestly, they're not favored in any games, man.
You remember the free agency? There was a shitload of wide receivers available. You remember the draft? There was a shitload of wide receivers available in that draft, and they didn't really do anything until day 3. Right?
They've done that for years and years, and it had
they've done that.
They took so many first-round wide receivers over the years.
Also, like you run the risk of putting yourself in purgatory, winning 8-9 games and not getting the pick that you need if you bring in a couple of guys who can play wide receiver and you put them with Goff and a competent O-line. Like it is a transition year. There's no other way to put it. And I think ultimately, honestly, like Goff, we didn't even mention it when we were talking about Goff, but he was kind of an injury question mark at the end of last year.
Yeah.
Do we think he makes it through this year healthy?
It's a good offensive line, and I think he knows I think he's not a dumb kid. He understands where he's at. He knows where he stands. Well, that's the thing. Like, he understands where he's at in this transition year too. He's looking to not get hurt and not play so bad that he can't get a next contract. So
safe stuff, no picks, no fumbles.
Safe stuff. He's going to throw out of bounds so much.
Oh my God, absolutely. Oh my God, you're right.
You get that ball out of bounds. You don't get hurt. You sign a decent contract. You go get like a Case Keenum-like contract. Just keep getting paid. Play somewhere and get a second chance. Or you know what, maybe, and obviously he's a competitor. He's a pro athlete. In his head, he probably has some inkling of, I've been to the Super Bowl already. I have the capacity to do this. I just need the team around me and the coach to do
Hey,
it with.
man.
Like, he wants to end up in a better situation. So yeah, he needs to have a decent year and if the team doesn't win, other teams will be like, just with those receivers, what are you going to do? Let's get Goff on our team with some good players around him, and maybe we can make that work. Because right now we're sitting on
Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor got a job in this league on a couple different
times.
teams now. Couple different times now. He's probably gonna start for the damn Texans. He started for the Chargers last year. Like, I mean, if Goff can do a decent Tyrod Taylor impression this year for the Lions, he gets a job next year. Absolutely, he gets a job.
There's a decent case to be made for Tyrod Taylor being the jump start of the Bills dynasty.
Oh, wow.
Which hasn't started yet. They have to win a Super Bowl. It's supposed to be a dynasty.
Right.
But he took that team to the playoffs. That was such a weird year. You'd made some cases for upside. And,
I have,
I get it.
I mean, upside. Yeah, let's go to the
upside. Maybe covering.
We'll wait till we see. Well, yeah. Okay, that's fair. But before kind of moving on, I think you brought up the winning angle on how to bet these guys. Goff interceptions under. You want to guess what that number is?
11.5.
13. You know how many paths to victory there are for that? He gets benched.
He gets hurt.
He just throws the ball out of bounds on 20 of his 30 pass attempts every week for 10 weeks, and then eventually gets replaced by David Blah. Or who's the other guy in there? Tim Boyle. Like,
Blah is not taking the second string snaps. Boyle is actually taking.
Oh, Boyle is taking. Snaps. Oh, really? Oh, wow. Tim Boyle. Oh, wow. How about that? Where did Tim Boyle go to school?
I made a case for him to throw the most picks this morning, and now I feel terrible about it.
Goff? I think you stumbled into exactly the most bettable angle.
I think I went the opposite way now that I said that out loud. Like, I've done a full 360 from this morning. My God. Maybe some yardage overs for the running back. Yardage overs will be low because they're going to be a team that's always behind.
Also, it's going to be committee. It's going to be a committee mess.
Yeah, it's going to be a committee mess. There's some ways to attack this team. God damn it. Now I hate my Goff. Most interceptions. I just looked at the schedule. It's like, man, there's rough. But now that you get into the meat of it, he might just be tossing it out of bounds trying to get that next contract.
Safety first.
He's a smart kid.
He's a smart kid. Plus he's not gonna, he's not gonna force it to the guys that aren't getting open, which is gonna be what's gonna be happening on the passing downs where he has to get 8, 9, 10 yards to keep the drive going. Those balls are going out of bounds, or he's scrambling, or he's checking down.
When he does force it too, he's going to force it short. It's gonna be a lot.
Yes.
Honestly, I might some Hawkinson overs. He's gonna just feed that guy.
That guy's receptions overs. You can't make that number big enough.
Oh, he's gonna get 100.
That's probably a massive number anyway. What do you think that number is? Probably 80, right? See if it's even up. Hawkinson,
I'm not even sure.
Guess what it is?
I thought that would be like high 60s.
I don't have it, but yeah, I got him for 775 receiving yards. So it's probably pretty close to.
If he wants to get 775 receiving yards, the way Goff will throw them the ball, that's 110 catches. So, all right, let's pull up the schedule and see how bad this really is.
I'm betting that Goff under interceptions now. Unless you can talk me out of it as we look at the schedule.
The biggest thing that sticks out to me right now is I laughed at how much they're a touchdown or more dogs in a lot of games. Is the game they're the most likely to win, implied by the odds. There is a pretty steady stream of rumors that Philadelphia might get Deshaun Watson. Right. So the game that they're most likely to win, according to the preseason odds, might have a top 5 quarterback coming off suspension at that point. Like their only hope is that Watson gets 8 games, because they play him 8. And then you get to still, and maybe Jalen Hurts isn't that bad. I don't know. He might not. He might be part of the deal. I'm not sure how that goes. But so outside of Cincinnati and Philly, it is a lot of big underdog spots against Green Bay, Chicago, and Minnesota. They're field goal-ish dogs, but I mean 7, 7.5, 7.5, 5.5, 8.5 to start the season. And it's one of those things where the expectations are pretty low. They're pretty low, and depending on this offense, Femi just brought this up in the chat. depending on this offense looks, they might be a decent teaser like against. Honestly, for some of these,
Yeah.
in some of these shorter ones, maybe I could, if I'm going to bet somebody in a teaser, I need them to have an okay defense to not give it away at the end. But yeah, some of these like Green Bay as a teaser, like on Monday Night Football, the whole world is going to have that in a teaser if it sits at 7.5.
No way that is a 7.5. These were the look aheads from that they released all in one shot.
Yeah.
It's got to be that's got to be pre-certainty that Aaron Rodgers was going to play. I bet you that game's like 10-ish now.
Oh, that's fair. That was like the midpoint between Love and Rodgers.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this, you've said it a couple times and you're dead on. The schedule is balls tough. Fucking A, this is a tough schedule. For a team that finished clearly in fourth place, to have this difficult of a schedule is eye-opening. It's surprising. And honestly, the NFC North is not especially tough. So 6 of their games are just like, yeah, I mean, they're tough, but they know how to play the Vikings and the Bears. They've stolen some wins. They've stolen some wins off of those teams. They've stolen some wins off the Packers over the last couple of years. So
if the defense stinks, though, the Vikings actually, like, the only upside is the Vikings have a couple decent receivers and a good back.
Yeah, this is the problem. Here's the problem.
And you face the AFC North.
Yeah, you just said it. Here's the problem. As the NFC North, and this is going to be a common theme. We're going to say it again during the Bears. We're going to say it again during the Vikings. We're going to say it again during the Packers. This is absolutely brutal that one division drew the most difficult division in the AFC and the most difficult division in the NFC as their cross opponents. Mm-hmm. And that is what happened with the NFC North this year. You got to play all the AFC West. You have legitimate talent, like the worst team in the NFC West. The NFC West, the worst team in the NFC West, Arizona Cardinals. That's a middle of the pack team. Their power number right now plus 1. So they're above average expectation right now, market power number wise. So you're playing 4 teams from the NFC West that are all better than average. You're playing 4 teams from the AFC North, 3 of whom are well above average. So right there, 7 of your games, you're absolutely a long shot without even lifting a finger. And then, of course, you get 2 against Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers. So, right there, we've counted, 9 games where you have realistically less than a 25% chance to win. I guess less than a 30% chance to win, which means, you're adding up wins starting with 0-9 realistically. And then the other 8 games you got, you brought it up exactly right. You got 4 against Chicago and Mini, and a best case scenario, you split with those guys. You win your home games. That's 2.
And not a ton of situational
4,
stuff on this.
That gets you to 4. Yeah, no, I can make a plausible case that this team gets to 4 wins, considering how difficult this schedule is. Yeah. And this has been one of the most
late in the year.
This has been one of the most bet overs, believe it or not.
Yeah.
People are really have been hitting this team hard throughout the offseason. People want a piece of this over. And I got to tell you, you're going to need some chaos. You're going to need some surprises, some injuries to get there, because these games are just so freaking tough. What's the Thanksgiving game?
Chicago. The only really sweet spot situationally is the next week. Minnesota is on a back-to-back, and the Lions will get extra rest off the Thanksgiving game. The rest of them, I mean, they have a couple, like, opponents are off a back-to-back. That's one of them. The only other one is Philly. If Philly doesn't make a move, that might be a way to win. Otherwise, it's a bunch of disadvantaged stuff. You have back-to-backs that end up in Seattle and Cleveland. Those aren't great ways to do it. The other one is Chicago and Minnesota, which divisional teams never easy.
At least you're playing them, yeah.
Yeah, your extra rest off the bye is an away game at Pittsburgh. We are fun. We're off our bye. We get to play Pittsburgh and Cleveland on the road to start off our second half of the season here. It's a rough schedule, and there's a bunch of good defensive secondaries here. It's going to be tough for a bad passing offense to get going against this. Yeah, if I had to bet, I'd bet the under, and maybe even an alt under. I'm not believing.
Especially because of the likelihood that this goes sideways early, right? I mean, like, if you want me to give you a positive here. They get to play their 2 cold weather opponents in Green Bay and Chicago. They get them in September.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
Congratulations. You don't have to go outside in the cold of winter and add insult to injury there. That game week 4, we'll get to Chicago. Maybe I won't spoil the surprise, but you want to guess what that total is? You want to guess what that total is?
Save it for the Bears part.
All right, I'll save it. Okay. Well, not looking good all of a sudden for our Detroit Lions. I think I was my general feeling that this team could surprise to the upside was based mostly on the very, very low expectations. Let's look at the odds and see if there's any bettable angles on this sucker. It's to win the Super Bowl, 150-1 is a stay away. To win the NFC, 75-1 is a stay away. To win the NFC North, 25-1. That's a big old number.
Big number.
That's a big fat number.
And as much as I've shat on these receivers, I did say they're unknowns. Like if Lynn turns out to be like, you need a few things have to happen. Lynn has to work well with Goff, and these receivers overperform. The defense has to be around that 20th mark, and like anything can happen from there. Aaron Rodgers could get hurt, and then the other 3 teams are right in the mix if this offense is working. I'm not saying to bet it, but boy, I'd take that 10 times over 10 to make the playoffs.
Oh, hell yes. They're not making a wild card spot, I don't believe. And I think to win the NFC North is the right angle, because honestly, without spoiling the next 3 teams, I don't think it's going to take a lot of wins to win the NFC North. And
the Vikings might just have COVID all year.
And there's lots of other problems with all these other teams too. So, yeah, I mean, I think you can talk yourself into a comfortable 4 wins. How they get to 6 and why people are betting over 5.5 at plus 140, I'm not sure. This was the smallest opener, I believe, or actually maybe the Texans were probably the smallest opener. Let me see what the opener was here. The opener for I have it bookmarked. The opener was 5, so it's been bet up to 5.5, but it's juiced to the over right now. So, but I have heard from a lot of people who are in the bookmaking side of the counter that this is one of the more popular plays that has come across the wire. People somehow, some way are glowing, are glossy, feel like the Lions are going to get that 6th win, although they're going to need some luck to do it, I think.
Yeah, I'm with it. I'm not laying 200 on the under. So I'll go an alt under 4.5, perhaps, if I was going to bet this. I don't know. I'll take a look at these markets, but not much for me on the Lions. Maybe the opposite of what I talked about this morning on Goff. That was on 15 minutes of research, though. So I don't hate that their season goes. Turned around. Maybe I'll bet both, most interceptions and under interceptions.
This is how their season goes. They have yet to get a win through week 11. They host Chicago on Thanksgiving. People are talking about, is this team going to go winless? Jared Goff plays through injury, gets a win versus Chicago at home, turns around, gets another win versus Minnesota at home. They have 2 wins all of a sudden, and the Detroit brass says, hey, we're going to put this kid on ice because he's dealing with some injuries, and it's Tim Boyle time to clean this thing up so that they finish 2-15.
They have like a handshake deal with Goff. They're like, all right, you were able to showcase it. We're going to
showcase it. You got a couple wins. They were big spotlight wins. We're sitting you down. You can go get a contract somewhere else next year. But yeah, ultimately, I don't know. In the right situation, I would take the points with this team, especially if the market dumps on them any more than they already have, then I would definitely take a swing.
You're going to give me 14 points in LA.
Yeah,
maybe I'd think about getting there. So
Tim Boyle rules.
Tim Boyle rules, yes, and we have a lot of issues.
I'm sure that was a Happy Gilmore reference.
This is like the NFC East. Like the NFC East is the NFC North light. Like we're not high on this division by any means. So
no.
Quickly,
shall we move on?
Before we get to Chicago, a lot of things happened while I was on vacation, but we have an official DFS sponsor. It is PrizePicks. If you've seen that going on at all on Brown Bag Bets, you can get 100% instant deposit match up to $100 when you use the promo code Deep Dive. It is putting together entries on player props. If you're into that sort of thing, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. And again, it's not like other DFS where you play against, professional DFS players like you do on certain other platforms, which I won't name names because I know some DFS players and they do pretty well on that because they're professionals. But just you versus the projections, you betting against the player prop lines, and you can mix up sports. So you can do like later this week, I'm going to do golf and baseball. And obviously this is just me reading the benefits and features of it later once we get around to football actually being played. In fact, possibly even later this week when we get to some preseason, I'm probably going to try to put some of this together and see how I do. Because
that's cool.
I just feel like I could beat the system. I always feel that way though.
And there's no sharks in the PrizePicks pool.
Yeah.
That's huge. I mean, that's a huge problem with DFS in general.
That's what makes it hard. That's what it's like. I only play like because eventually if you win enough on like DraftKings, you can't play in like the $2 contests.
Yeah, right.
It's like I'll play the little ones because I feel like the big guys can't get me.
Oh, Andy's a big timer. He can't play in the $2 pools anymore.
No, I can.
Oh, you can.
I don't play enough. A lot of mine are just buddy leagues for golf.
Oh, okay.
So.
Gotcha.
All right, Bears 2020.
Let's move on to the Bears.
Mediocrity.
Do you want to recap? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, mediocrity encompassed. They finished 8-8. Their Pythag put them almost exactly at 8-8. They obviously because of that too. They scored 40 touchdowns and gave up 41, and they played players such as Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles. So very much the definition of a middle of the pack team. But the NFC was bad enough last year too that they ended up making the playoffs. They actually started 5-1, lost 6 straight, which was a fun for all the Bears fans that were super excited about their team. And then they ended up backing into the playoffs. They lost to Green Bay, but the Cardinals also lost, I believe, to the Rams. Somebody in the chat can probably correct me on that. And it was Tampa over Arizona maybe. But either way, they won
Carolina last week, I think.
Yeah, they won a tiebreaker over the Cardinals, I think it was, and then ended up losing to New Orleans in a game that, honestly, now that I go back and look at it, it could have gone a little differently if Dipshit would have, put his hands together and caught that deep pass. Because honestly, Trubisky put some air under that. He put that in a really nice spot. Maybe one of the better passes I've ever seen Trubisky throw. And the receiver just whiffed on an easy touchdown. And from there, it went. And really, you were playing against an absolute beat-up New Orleans team, missing some players. You had a chance to be – I mean, Breeze was in bad shape at that point. You're missing a receiver. You had a chance to win that game, and they didn't take advantage of it. And, mediocrity ends up in the middle of the pack drafting, and they've made a lot of changes. And really, I think they ended up okay as far as how that went. So – I thought the draft went good. I think we're both kind of bullish on this team, maybe even less long term than the Lions. As far as turnarounds, like if you had to rate, like what are your chances if you had to put 2-way odds, Lions versus Bears, who makes the playoffs sooner?
Oh, I think I have to put Bears at about -200 there.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's right, just because
they got a little head start.
They do have a little head start. They have some old holes we'll get to, but I'm not a quarterback whisperer. I'm terrible at evaluating this. So I lean on other people, smart people like Thor, like other people like Solik, like other people we've talked to about the college players coming in. Consensus is that Fields might be a hit, and that's what makes you into a playoff team sooner. So yeah, the Bears season was goofy. The Trubisky injury, the comeback, goofy. Comeback we mentioned against the Lions, like
they had come back really against the Falcons too.
Yep, the Foles aided comeback, and it was a playoff team really if you get down to it, because you can't argue with that. But again, an 8-8 team that made the playoffs, and it's such a weird spot for the front office / coaching. Like no one has ever danced on this razor's edge as well as it's like just like watching him teeter with Nagy and Pace. Like, oh man, just 1 or 2 games and they're gone, or 1 and 2 more games and they're good again. But I think that 12-4 season carries a lot of weight, and just honestly surprising, I guess, the fact that the biggest part of the 2020 season for me was passing on Mitch Trubisky's 5th year. And when you do that, and say, this is the guy that we traded up to get, and now we're saying we were dead wrong. I don't know what conversation they had behind the scenes at Hallis Hall, but to do that and still retain your jobs is rare. So someone does believe in the Nagy Pace thing up there in Chicago, and maybe they might have lucked their way into maybe possibly the best quarterback in the draft. You never know. Like it's such a weird deal. So I think a lot of turmoil that ended up not being as much turmoil as I thought there would be in the offseason. And here we are, 2021. I think the Bears are, obviously in a whole different position, but kind of in a similar position as far as odds. Like I think they're right there with the Vikings last year. Was it Vikings Packers roughly co-favorites last year, and the Bears a step behind them?
Vikings were a little behind the Packers. I want to say
Yeah.
it was like plus 110, plus 150, plus 220-ish, something like that. Okay. I mean, the 2020 Bears season was fucking bizarre. It was so damn weird. I was low on them coming into last season. Like, if you had asked me on the eve of the season starting what were my favorite bets, I probably would have been like, oh, Bears alt under. Like, this team is so effed. Like, they don't have anything figured out. They're going with the Mitch Trubisky, Nick Foles, quarterback tandem here. Like, this is a disaster waiting to happen. I was cold on these guys, and then they go out and went 5-1. And they beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in prime time. That was the infamous game where Tom Brady forgot it was fourth down and got up was like, wait, the game's over. Fourth down? No, we just had fourth down. What a long way to go for Tom Brady last year, from not being able to count downs in week 4 in prime time. Week 5 in prime time to winning the Super Bowl. But either way, it was a weird season. They were 5-1 at one point, and I think the common narrative at that point, halfway through October, was this is the worst 5-1 team of all time. Like, there's no doubt this is the worst. And it was a ton of it, as you look back, was because their schedule was super, super easy. They had it easy last year. They managed to find losses to some teams they probably should have beat, like the Lions, like the Vikings. But in general, their schedule was peasy, easy peasy. And I think that aided a lot in the 2 years prior, where they went 12-4. They had an easy schedule that year, and so a lot of the Bears understanding how good this team was, bad this team was, is context. And they had a relatively healthy season, I thought, last year. Like, player availability was pretty high. I thought their offense, obviously struggled from the limitations put upon you by having a quarterback like Mitch Trubisky or Nick Foles, both of whom were not good. And the defense is getting kind of old, and this offseason, man, there's some attrition here on the defense that may finally catch up to them. And we said that last year too, but this year now it might be death by 1,000 cuts. It's
slowly gotten worse over the last few years, and they're not getting any younger. Obviously, the Fuller is a big deal. Like,
would you rather have Andy Dalton or Kyle Fuller? My God,
I'd rather have Kyle Fuller.
You're giving Andy Dalton $10 million, for Christ's sakes.
Especially when you ended up drafting, like, you had to know at some point, like, we're in the market to draft a quarterback if it works out. Like, if you're, I don't know, let's say you don't get a quarterback, you end up with a defense. I don't know who else they would be looking at. Probably not a wide receiver at that range. Maybe a defender, maybe an offensive lineman. I'm not sure if they wouldn't have gone there. A corner would have been nice, actually, too. Some of them were falling around that range. But if you don't go there, what is the plan? Andy Dalton is the plan that year?
Yeah.
I think after the draft,
Nick Foles
then you
the
can fire
too.
Nagy, like, right there.
You got Nick Foles on the roster too. So
yeah, I'm not sure what the plan was pre-Fields. Like, it'd be interesting to know if, like, they went into the draft thinking, like, we have a decent chance of maybe getting a quarterback if he falls to us, or we're going for a quarterback. So,
was anyone else in the market for Andy Dalton? Like, why did you give him $10 million? Kyle Fuller got 9.5 from the Broncos.
We watched him play. I mean, I wasn't that excited. So, yeah, I think the Fuller thing is bad. This defense may still continue to regress. You do get a defensive tackle back from a COVID opt-out, but you've been on record already on this podcast saying you are not going to give people the benefit of the doubt for taking a year off of football and just coming back and playing at the, how you did in 2019. So
how could you?
Maybe with a defensive lineman, if
that'll be the exception, not the rule.
Yeah, if a defensive lineman does it, if he stayed in shape, I guess I'm a little more okay with it because it's just go out there, be big, stop the run, do a little pass rushing if you need to. And they have an okay front four, so more than okay. It's a good front four when healthy and together. But yeah, this defense will probably continue to, if not take a step back, be similar to last year. And Fields, a lot of upside, but again, very unknown rookie and very unknown what we have for a floor and ceiling in reality because he's a rookie. And yeah, the quarterbacks they have on the roster besides that don't breed any sort of optimism from my mind.
So the off season was weird because free agency comes and goes. They bleed more. They make a couple moves that you're like, what? And on the eve of the draft, I was literally like, okay, well, Nagy and Pace are done. They're going to get fired. Like, there's literally no way that they can save their jobs at this point. And lo and behold, Fields falls into their lap. And that definitely affords these guys a second life. I think it is pretty, that's a common, like, save my job kind of a move. Fire the coach, draft a quarterback in first round. Like, those are the kind of the ways that a GM kind of retains the job because there's plausible the reasons things aren't going as well as expected. Like, oh, we got a new, the coach was the problem. Oh, well, we got a new quarterback. I mean, like, there's reasons that you can kind of explain your way out of a mess if you're doing a poor job managing a team. And so they probably will get a couple of years with this guy. And presumably, if he is anywhere close to as good as the reports suggest, and again, his skill set and his, his general, kind of perfect mix of athleticism and passing ability are perfect for where this team is relatively weak, honestly. They don't have a ton of wide receivers who can get separation. They don't have a good offensive line at all. In fact, this might be a bad offensive line. But a guy like Fields should still be able to get things done in this type of offense. Allen Robinson is going to get separation. He's going to be wide open if you can deliver precision passes. They made a couple of decent moves, I thought, in terms of some of the skill position players that they retained, brought in. They have a decent set of weapons in the running game all of a sudden. Montgomery,
not only in the running game,
I'll be honest,
the running backs catching balls as well.
I hate Montgomery. I really would like to see them move on from Montgomery. He is not my favorite guy, but they brought Damian Williams in, again, a guy off of a COVID absence. So again, expectations are low here. But they got some talent all of a sudden, in some parts of this offensive roster. And I don't know. I mean, what's your the Nagy experience? This is his fourth year. Year one, he made chicken salad out of Mitch Trubisky shit. Year two, I thought he tried
the defense was so good that year.
The defense was so good.
So much turnover luck.
Year two, I thought it was him proving a point to management that Trubisky wasn't the guy. Year three was, well, now what do we do to save our jobs? Does he have any of the magic that he was hired to bring from the Andy Reid system?
Boy, we talked Patricia. Now we're talking Nagy coming off the Belichick and Reid trees, and both of them grossly underperformed. Boy, and especially if you want to throw out that year where the defense really took that team, and Mitch played well in 2018. But yeah, he's obviously, go look at first coach fired. He's still high up there, even with the lifeline that is a young rookie, exciting quarterback. Especially if you go with, you don't start him right away and it goes bad, be like, all right, now we're bringing him in. Like,
right.
This is going to buy me a few more weeks, which sucks because it's not how I would do things. But yeah, and the defense, the defense, I just talked a couple times about how good 2018's defense was. Somebody in the chat, I think James in the chat said, is Jalen Johnson the best corner on the team? Who's number two? You're right, because Desmond Trufant is a name that people know, but Desmond Trufant low-key sucks now, and he might not be the starting corner on the other side for part of for a chunk of the season if some of these young guys push him. So I mean, they do have a bunch of young corners, some unknowns, and I guess Tashawn Gibson there, but
Eddie Jackson rocks.
So yeah, the safeties. Safeties will be all right. Eddie Jackson, great free safety. Gibson is strong. I guess I'm okay with that. But yeah, the outside of Jalen, and it's not like I'm a huge Jalen Johnson guy, but yeah, the cornerbacks could be a bit of an issue.
Jalen Johnson, I thought was kind of good last year. He's a rookie. He's going to take a step forward. I thought they hit on that pick. I thought they hit on that pick. Yeah. Personally.
That was a second rounder too. So yeah,
honestly,
he's probably their best corner. This defense
if they gave that $10 million from Andy Dalton to Kyle Fuller, I'm in on this team. I'm screaming that they have more of a chance than people realize. But like they're really, really, really going to be reliant on their pass rush, winning 1v1 and getting home. And they are really, really, really putting these cornerbacks into difficult coverage spots a lot here. I mean, the linebacking core, great. The pass rush, great. Defensive attack, Hakeem Hicks, love him. This is a very strong front seven and a very questionable cornerback, nickelback situation that the safeties are going to have to help them. Yeah. But again, like the scheme can work. This can work. This could on paper, especially against a medium or below average offense, this could look like a good defense. Don't you think?
Yeah. If the pass rush works, and like Hicks, good. Maybe gets better again with Goldman next to him. Having, it'll be the 2019 defensive line kind of. And it's
with that defensive line. Look how much money they're making. Oh my!
It's a lot. Dude. It's just between Mac and it's a ton. And Mac's 30 now, so I mean, it's a little bit of an older defensive line, but it should be good. Yeah, Roquan obviously. Roquan is a stud. Danny Trevathan's very good. The safety, at least at free safety, I'm pretty happy with it, Eddie Jackson. But if the cornerback play is suspect, a lot of that doesn't matter because it's a passing league. And if you can get guys open early, it's we go back and back and back on this. But the Patriots a few years ago, where they were struggling on the offensive line, and then the playoffs, they just said, well, Brady's going to get rid of the ball about 0.5 of a second faster on average every single down now from now on. And it's like they went up against good pass rush after good pass rush, and they never got home because they just got rid of the ball so fast. So if the secondary sucks and teams can figure out that, well, our guys are open early, we're just going to not let this pass rush, this expensive pass rush, beat us and just beat them with short stuff, nickel and dime them, West Coast their ass to death. That's a very beatable, and that's outside of that, then we have roster holes for Chicago on the rundown here. I think the secondary is a big question mark, and you brought it up before, and I'd like you to expand on this too. The offensive line is maybe a bigger roster hole for me, and as much as we said, like that's the only good thing. If you put the Lions and Bears together, you got a decent team. You got to have a decent team, honestly, because the Lions have a good offensive line.
They got some youth in the secondary that might be pretty decent. Oh man, that's a great point. This offensive line for the Bears, if you made me say what is one of the highest confidence opinions you have about the Bears, is that this is going to be a bottom 5 unit.
I have it 28th. I think
that counts barely by the skin and by the hair of their buried chins. That is a bottom 5.
Tied with someone.
Realistically, I say that I have high confidence in that because I don't see much upside. First of all, the guy that they, at the time I thought, whoa, steal, when they went and got Tevin Jenkins to be their left tackle of the future, kid out of Oklahoma State, great tape, great potential, great everything. Not healthy. I don't know what you're going to get out of him this year. I don't know that he's getting the reps he needs in camp. The rest of this line, Jermaine Ifedi, Cody Whitehair, James Daniels. Oh my goodness, man. And then your right tackle situation, I don't even know. I mean, who's even going to get the look? Wilkinson. This is setting up to be a really, really poor unit, which means anytime they go up against a team that can rush the passer well, the offense is going to look poor. Anytime they are in we need to come back to get back into the game situation, they are going to struggle because teams are going to be able to put pressure on them anytime, because that's the key. If your offensive line is this bad, you're going to struggle in comeback mode. You are. Doesn't matter how good your quarterback play is. It doesn't matter how good your offensive skill position players are. Like if you're this questionable in terms of pass pro, and you are in an obvious passing down situation at the end of a game where you're down by a touchdown or more, you are going to struggle. So this is a Bears team that I will be happy to lay the points against if they are playing good teams and they are losing at halftime. That is kind of my general read on them.
They might move a Fetty into guard.
That's where I'm seeing him now, left guard or right guard.
And then
right guard.
Yeah, there's some people that, I mean, I think he can play right tackle too, but I think that Wilkinson will be a right tackle. But either way, like, not excited about any of those guys, and especially if you an oft injured possible injury risk / young guy at left tackle. None of that sounds good. That makes me nervous for my guy Justin.
Yeah, me too. And honestly, like, I want him to succeed, but
at least he's scrambly.
That's key. That's huge. And really, at least he's scrambly. What that means is if they can get off to some good starts in games, right? Like this is going to be a high volatility team. Like 1 week, their pass rush is clicking, they're sacking, they're getting strip sacks, they're getting fumble return 6. Justin Fields is eluding the pressure. He's scrambling for 75-yard touchdowns. The next week, it is just they can't get pressure. They're down by 14 points and they're losing by 40, right? Like, this is one of those teams where it's going to go both ends of the spectrum. You're going to see it all. This isn't going to be every game's decided by a field goal. The little things are going to matter. Margins are going to be narrow. Like, it's going to be all or nothing every week with these guys. And I look forward to buying and selling on the positives and the negatives accordingly.
Yeah, Bears down by 10 at halftime. Betting the opponent. I'm betting the opponent money line second half.
Exactly.
That's not where you want to put.
They can rush the passer. Let's look at the schedule and find some of those teams.
And that's the thing. Yeah, obviously, you'll have to put a little context. I'm not just going to do that blindly, but a team that putting a young quarterback behind a questionable offensive line, making him try to come back and throw a lot. That's not where I want a team in the second half.
Or even week 1, Andy Dalton.
Yeah. Andy Dalton's not where I want. I'm not putting him behind that bad offensive line doing that too. We saw what happens because the Dallas offensive line was an unmitigated disaster.
I have a bet already.
That didn't go well.
No, it didn't. I have a bet already on the Rams-Bears under, predicated on the Bears not scoring in that game. And I bet it already, but I have another bigger bet in the queue that I'm waiting for, like, full confirmation that it is going to be Andy Dalton. And if and when it is, that is bombs away, because I got to tell you, man, there's a Cleveland week 3. Oh my God, that pass rush against this offensive line. Good fucking luck. Tampa Bay.
Those
week
are fun
7.
ones to take.
Buddy, San Francisco week 8. Oh, buddy, Pittsburgh week 9. Boom. 1, 2, 3. Those are 3. Okay, so this is how it goes. Ready? San Francisco and Tampa Bay pass rush just absolutely eat the Bears alive back to back. People look at Pittsburgh and they say, well, this Pittsburgh defensive line is going to eat the Bears alive as well. Therefore, we're going to back the Pittsburgh is going to be completely out of whack there. That might be an insane number. And then you back the Bears there because the Bears pass rush is going to get theirs against the weak Pittsburgh offensive line.
That's a game where you absolutely find you take a little bit of money. Well, just like a quarter of what you normally bet on a game, and bet defensive touchdown. Yes. Bears money line too, but defensive touchdown, and it's a Monday night game, so everybody will have the first touchdown. Defense.
Oh shit!
Defense. Anytime.
I love that.
I love that. There's a possibility for what? What's your over under on strip sacks in that game?
3.5.
3.5. Yeah. Like, the ball's gonna be bounced around. That'll be a fun game. That's gonna be a really fun Monday night football game. Hopefully it rains.
Yeah. Oh God, that would be so great in Pittsburgh, like around Halloween there. Oh, that would be so good. Oh man, I'm sweating this Tommy Paul. He blew match point. Come on, Tommy. Pull it together, Tommy.
Do you see who he's dating? He's not worried about. He's not worried about Dennis right now.
I'm worried about him. Man. He can.
You better let him know.
You want to keep that relationship happy. You got to do a lot better than losing to Vasek Pospisil. I'm sorry. Back to the Bears schedule. Yes, the schedule is very, very tough. On top of the fact that there are a lot of teams with very good pass rush here. Boy, I mean, what are the 5 toughest pass rushes that they'll face this year.
Well, just we'll say this again versus for the Packers. We'll say it for the Vikings. Based on the divisions they play, they're playing a bunch of tough defenses. This is going to be a theme. It's no different from the Lions. The Bears play a lot of the same teams. And really, the only advantage they have over Detroit is that they don't have to play themselves because they themselves are a decent pass rush. That's what makes it worse for Detroit. But yeah, going up against the Rams, what they can get not only outside but the interior pressure. The Cleveland pass rush may well be the best pass rush in the league when the dust settles after 18 weeks. And again, Pittsburgh's offensive line might suck, but their defensive pass rush still will be very good even after losing Dupree. Facing Minnesota twice too. Minnesota getting Hunter back, and they have a defensive-minded head coach. Getting them back on track with the pass rush. It's not going to be a top 5 they face, but that Minnesota pass rush, it might be a bad defense, but that pass rush might come together a little. And then really you got you got to face the Giants defense. I get to get them at home. There's some tough spots there. Baltimore's not fun. Niners, that's not fun. Tampa, you mentioned, that's not fun. Like this, if this offensive line truly does stink, it'd probably be best case scenario for this team. Fields is good. Here's best case. Fields is good, doesn't get hurt somehow behind this patchwork offensive line. They lose like 14 games, and they move on from Nagy and Pace.
Yeah.
And Fields, and then they invest in a high-end offensive tackle. Yeah. They invest a little more in some lower-priced offensive weapons, and
they don't have a ton of draft capital because of the Fields trade.
Yes, right? They have not had some draft capital. It's been a rough few years.
They mortgaged the future, right?
Yeah, a little bit, which sucks. But at the same time, I'd rather see this team do a little more of a rebuild than win like 9 games or make the playoffs. So, but if I'm running the team, if I'm a fan, if I'm watching this team, like it's fun to have your team make the playoffs, but getting some decent draft capital for next year, and building this offensive lineup a little around an exciting young rookie and a good offense and a good receiver, some good running backs, and getting some younger pieces on the defense, I'd like that. I'd like that a lot.
They
have a tricolor spot, Baltimore. Jesus.
I know that's a weird one. Bears are coming off of their bye. Baltimore is coming off of Thursday Night Football, so it's a little.
But also a back-to-back.
But also will be their second week in a row on the road. Yeah. Here's a fun over/under. Over/under. I will bet on 13.5 Bears games this year. I feel like I'm going to bet this team every damn week. Like you were saying in the run-up in the prep for this pod. You were having a tough time getting a read on the Bears, right?
I think season long, yes. Like I want no part of a season long thing, but I think we did. You're right. We nailed on a lot of things. Like if this offensive line is shit, Tommy Paul, there we go.
Fuck yeah.
If this offensive line is shit, we're going to know a lot of ways to bet this team. We're going to have some good looks in the second half. If they're behind, we're going to have some good like team total under second half.
Oh yeah.
Those are going to be overpriced. Well, they got to come back. Well, they won't. Because everyone knows they're throwing now, and their offensive line already stinks. So if this defense stinks and the offensive line stinks a little bit on an equal level to last year, which wasn't a stinky defense, it was just worse than the year before, which was worse than the year before that. If the defense continues that pattern or stays static to last year,
league average,
offensive line stinks.
Honestly.
Yeah, well, I think we'll know what to do this team. It's probably, and if the defense steps up, it's an unders team. Boy, isn't it an unders team.
Oh boy, is it? Yes, it is. It absolutely is. Especially if they convince themselves that they're a defensive team and you get like it becomes the David Montgomery show.
They become conservative.
If it's the Montgomery show, oh god. How many? Okay, here's one last fun prop for you. Over under 2.5 starts for Andy Dalton.
I think I'm over. I'd juice that over. I think he starts 2-3 games. Just the way the Bears.
Can you pull up the schedule again for me? And you tell me the optimal time that you want to insert Andy Dalton. You want to insert Justin Fields. You want to let Andy Dalton die in Cleveland, and then you
Yep,
bring in
and then
Justin
start 'em in
Fields
Detroit.
for Detroit.
No, that's perfect. That's honestly perfect.
Okay. Yeah, boy, look at that. Nice little
And then
start. Detroit, Vegas back-to-back as your
and then
first
yeah,
two
you
games as a
hey
pro.
buddy, that
Oh,
was a
man, you
great
might
first
run
start. Let's
amok.
take you to
You might
Vegas.
run amok, man. Okay,
Yeah,
so 2.5. See, I thought 2.5 was a sharp number. So you think you think Andy Dalton gets juicy 2.5, he gets 3 starts. Okay.
Yeah, like
Okay.
there's a decent chance that Fields' first action is versus Cleveland with Andy the Red
does
Rifle.
the 2.5
Just
does the 2.5 have to be the halftime of game
not
2?
it's not like a
like
boxing
UFC?
prop.
It's not like
No,
UFC?
it's not. No, it's not about it. It's game
He
started.
starts game 3. Okay.
So he starts game 3. He does not finish game 3. He leaves on a
Okay.
in a walking boot, as he has a Liz Frank injury. I'm going to call it to get pretty specific.
Liz Frank.
Yeah.
Oh wow, you're giving him the Carson Wentz toe fracture or whatever it was.
Yeah, it's just a hard.
That's
turf
going
toe.
around, man. That's going around.
Let's take a look at the odds then.
Yeah, let's look at our odds. Chicago to win the Super Bowl is 50-1. To win the NFC plus 2250. Yeah, neither of those. Like the upside of this team isn't good enough to win 3 playoff games. I'm sorry, and the upside of this team isn't good enough to get a playoff bye. So there's no reason really to get involved in these markets because these numbers are not going to get substantially shorter, especially because they start with 2 of their first 3 games are against the Rams and the Browns. Entirely possible we get to halfway through the season and we're like, wow, the Rams and the Browns are the best 2 teams in the NFL. Who knew? Like that's possible. And they play them 2 of their first 3. So any bets and anything in getting involved with the Bears in the futures market, best wait till week 4 against the Lions. See what happens with Dalton, see what happens with Fields, see if this offensive line has any cohesiveness at all. Maybe they're a league average unit, not bottom 5 like I think. But that NFC North plus 400, I think once they're 1-2 or 0-3, that number is going to be like 15, 20-1.
12, 15, yeah.
And that's probably an overreaction at that point. And maybe at that point, if you want to get involved, I won't stop you. I won't step in front of you.
I can urge you. Somebody is asking what number you played that under at for week 1.
What number did I play it? I think I played 45.5.
45.5. I was going to say 45 flat. Wasn't sure. So to make the playoffs plus 185, you know what? That's probably a pretty sharp number because this team probably does land somewhere in that. It's not a easy schedule, but they're in a better position. Yeah, they are. Yeah, if they probably make the playoffs 1 out of 3 times, just because the NFC is a little weak and if Fields plays well, and so I'm not interested in that. Yeah,
if they can make the playoffs, if they can make the playoffs last year in a 7-team field, why can't they this year?
Yeah,
I mean their schedule is easier. That's the big deal.
8-5 does 8-9. Is there an 8-9 team in the playoffs in the NFC?
I think probably not. I think that's 50-50. I think that's 50-50. I really
I'm just looking at the win total versus
there's going to be chaos. The NFC is so effed this year. Not only do you have all of those games, they have to go play the AFC. The AFC got more home games, but the AFC is tougher. They're going to like the record between the AFC and the NFC. We talked about it was going to be, what the AFC might win 10 more games in the NFC overall. It's going to be pretty lopsided, and I could see an 8-9 getting in for the NFC. I'm going to give it about 50-50. To close the loop, I played the under week 1 at 45 minus 108. I did something nice for our listeners who were loyal and were watching No, you can. I bet you can actually. Everyone's doing 108 now.
Oh, really? Okay.
I played it. Here's a quiz for you. Who's taking the largest limits on totals right now? Do you know?
You want to hear something weird? Do you remember our friend was talking about Ryder Cup bets earlier?
Yes, I do remember that.
Bovada and Bet Online. Who do you think is taking a larger bet on the Ryder Cup, and by what? You would. By what level? By what order of magnitude?
I mean, Bet Online has had some teeny tiny markets lately, so I'm guessing it's a 10x Bovada.
It's only 5x, but it's
okay. That's still amazing.
5K on the Ryder Cup.
What? Yes. They are?
Yes, I don't know. There's places
what is going on?
There's places taking 250 on that, and Bovada's just throwing their schlong on the table, taking 5K on either the 3-way market on the Ryder Cup.
Wow, I like that.
There's that happening. So, but it is. Hopefully, 108 is standard, not the deviation.
Yeah,
That'd be
both
awesome.
Bookmaker and Nitro are dealing 108 nowadays. So cool. Book and Nitro, by the way, taking bigger limits on the NFL totals right now than Bookmaker. How about that? How about that?
1.926.
How about that?
On Nitro, though.
I did something solid for our viewers who tuned into the YouTube live stream of the Colts Titans. I went in and watched because I wanted to make sure we didn't say anything like especially stupid about the Colts because we recorded it so early. And I thought we actually did a pretty good job. But while I was in there, I gave the people who were watching the pre-recorded live the premiere, I gave them some week 1 plays that I had bet early. So it was a fun times we had.
I'm trying to think what I did on Wednesday. Honestly, I probably was at a beach. It's like,
well, of course,
it's like $25-$30 to park at these beaches.
Oh,
so you feel like, well, not only that, like once you sit down on those beach chairs, those low beach chairs, like the house came with a bunch of beach chairs, a big ass umbrella, a bunch of boogie boards, and like toys for the sand. So like once you've paid, but it's a cognitive bias. You're angry or what? No, it's just a pot committed one. What can I think of now?
Yeah, right. You're pot committed.
There's a better word for it. We'll think of it. But once you pay that money and you get on that comfy ass chair and you're underneath the umbrella. Sunk cost fallacy. Exactly. I knew there's something sunk is funny for the beach. But once you're on the beach, it's like all of a sudden it's like, man, we've been here for like 6 hours. Like we'd always pack a lunch too because we had a big cooler. So man, I spend a lot of time on the beach. I got my thighs burnt really bad.
That's fucking
awesome. I had some short shorts. I let the girls see the legs.
I'm just going to kind of wrap up the Bears here. I have no opinion on over 7.5, under 7.5 wins.
That's a good number.
That's a fair price. Tell me more about Maine. What was the best part of your vacation?
Well, you can't spit without hitting the goddamn lighthouse. I'll tell you that. They're all over.
What was the best lighthouse? Did you go to Perkins Cove?
Honestly, we went to the one at Nubbins, like in
Nubble Light.
Nubbins. I was Nubble Light. That was okay. That was the first place I ate. The one up in Portland was better. Like that one was massive. I like that one. We didn't go that far north, but the best part was probably there's some good mini golf out there. Played every time we'd go. And my kid had never done go-karts. He wasn't old enough, so he drove with me. So you'd pass him. He just yelling. We hit the turbo boost. Go-karts was super fun. But yeah, we played. So 4 of us played 36 holes of mini golf. So that's 144 holes of mini golf. Only 1 hole in one, and it was by my 6-year-old, the youngest.
Oh, nice.
And he turned around and gave me it like he was awful. He's 6. Like it was just a lucky shot. He turned around and he gave me like the Tiger Woods fist pump.
Yes.
It was hilarious.
He didn't do the followed into the hole.
No, he walks him in, but he walks every putt in because he's excited about hitting the next ball. So as soon as he hits it, he starts walking. So clam chowder. The chowder was amazing. The lobster rolls were great. I'll say I think I might like crab rolls better. The seasoning in some of those crab rolls are really good. The brioche is awesome.
Yeah, you got to be a tarragon guy if you like if you're going to get into the lobster roll pretty heavily. Did you have any just order a Maine lobster and break it down yourself?
Yeah, I did that at the end of the trip. Right. I said, I'm going to cut out the middleman. I'm like, just give me a whole damn lobster. I didn't get a very big one. I wasn't terribly hungry. I'm like, I just got a
2-pounder.
No, it was like a pound and a quarter, but it was very good.
You didn't do like the Simpsons and walk over to the thing and pick out the one you wanted and then take them home as a pet?
It's crazy how many of the seafood shacks are just like order at the window.
Was that
take a lobster roll.
Was that Pinchy?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, no, the seafood shacks are that is the future of dining in general in the United States. They need to get on board with that. It's such
just
a
walk up
to the window, put your order in, give you a number, they bring it out to your table. That's such a slick gig. That's such a slick deal.
And every beach had that and like 10 pizza places where it was just windows. Like, go take this, eat it at the beach. Like, why would you eat this in our restaurant? There's a beach right there. to a boardwalk somewhere. Maybe somebody will know where this is. There was a amusement park right next to it, which we fucking didn't know that was there. So once we pulled into town to go to this beach, the kids see the Ferris wheel, and we wouldn't hear the end of that until we went and did rides at the end of the day. But they had a boardwalk that extended out on a pier, and it was so skeezy. It cost 75 cents to go to the bathroom there. There was just a lady sitting on a folding chair taking 75 cents so you could go to the bathroom. I'm like, I'm going to the ocean next time. Fuck this.
Is that Old Orchard Beach?
Yes, that sounds right.
Yeah.
That was fun. We had fun there, though. Either way.
That's cool.
So,
man.
all right.
Well,
Well,
cool.
Bears and Lions in the books. Vikings and Packers on deck for Wednesday. We thank you for joining us. If you're in the YouTube chat, do a thumbs up because that's better for SEO purposes, and you know, gotta pay Whale's salary somehow.
I'm due for a raise. Negotiations are going to be big time this year.
Big time. Yes, we're unionizing, I believe. Hopefully he doesn't watch this part. He would never watch. He would never watch an hour 40 deep into it. So, all right, thanks.
Who are our sponsors again?
WinBet, PrizePicks, BETSPERTS, Drew, Andy, and producer Dan for hanging with us for a whole long podcast here.
Oh, this was
he had it easy last week. He just had to post
been
them.
one of our best.
I had a lot of fun. And yeah, Xavier Howard, thank you for your masterclass in negotiating. You absolutely nailed that.
Keeping it together. Keep it together. Yep. That was great. All right. Best of luck.